Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to calculate the inverse of a matrix in Matlab and Excel and use that to solve an AX equals B problem. So solving a set of linear equations, so n equations with n unknowns. We're going to just do 3 equations with 3 unknowns case because it's simple and easy to type in. But the principles apply to any set of linear equations and corresponding unknowns. So first of all, how do we calculate the inverse of a matrix in MATLAB? Well, first of all, we need to define a matrix in MATLAB. So here I'm in the MATLAB command window. I'm just going to define a matrix. I'm going to call it A because that's what we typically call the coefficient matrix for a linear system. So A is equal to, I'm going to use the square bracket notation to define my matrix. So I'm just going to give it a whole bunch of integer values. So the first row I'm going to give as 5, 3, minus 1, and a semicolon denotes the end of the row. I'm hitting enter. Now I can actually do this all on the same line, but I'm spacing it out so that it's just easier to read. So 5, 3 minus 1, first row. The next row is going to be 1, minus 1, and 2, semicolon. Start the new row. 1, minus 8, minus 1, and then close the bracket. Now if I hit enter, I've defined this matrix A, which I'm calling the coefficient matrix for a system of 3 equations with 3 unknowns. Now, if I want to solve this system of linear equations, technically I also need a B matrix, a B vector that stores the constant or the right hand side terms of my equations. And so I'm just going to come up with a B vector. B is going to be equal to, and I'm going to make it a column vector. So 3 rows, 1 column. So it's going to have values of 8, 5, and minus 18. Okay, so now I have my B vector. So that's my system of equations, and now I want to calculate the inverse of A. Well, it's really easy to do in MATLAB. I'm just going to define a new variable that stores the inverse of A. I'm going to call it A inverse, and that's going to be equal to the inverse. INV is the command that calculates the inverse, and I give it A. And so long as A is invertible, it should return the inverse of A. So here it's calculated the inverse of A. So now if I want to solve my system of linear equations, I can calculate my solution vector, which I'm going to call X, because that's just what we typically call it. It's convention. X is going to equal A inverse times B, where this is the matrix product of A inverse and B. And I showed in a previous video that this is how we solve the AX equals B problem using the inverse. So we see that the solution is my 3 unknowns are equal to 1, 2, and 3. And when they're equal to 1, 2, and 3, they satisfy the equations defined by this A matrix. So one way we can check our answer is we should be able to multiply A by our solution vector X, and that should be equal to B, which is 8, 5, minus 18. So let's check that. So if we take A times X, it should be equal to B, and indeed it is. So that's how we calculate the inverse of a matrix in MATLAB and solve a matrix equation linear equation, linear set of equations in MATLAB. Now what about Excel? Now I use Linux, and so I actually don't have Excel. I have LibreOffice, but it's done exactly the same in LibreOffice as it is in Excel. So this should be the exact same for somebody using Excel. So I have the same matrix that I used in MATLAB here, and I've just defined it in its own set of 3 cells, and I've defined the same B vector as well, constant vector or forcing vector. So if I want to calculate the inverse in Excel, all I do is I highlight these cells that I've designated. That's where I'm going to store the inverse. Once I have them highlighted, I hit the equals key on my keyboard, equals, and I type in M, stands for matrix inverse. And then I open a parentheses, and it says that I need to highlight the cells that contain the array whose inverse I'm looking for. So I'm looking for the inverse of A, so I need to highlight these cells where I'm storing the A matrix. Then I close my parentheses, so I just held shift and hit the 0 key on my keyboard, which closed the parentheses. And now instead of just hitting enter like you normally would do, because I'm highlighting multiple cells, if I want this to apply to all the cells, I have to hit Control Shift Enter all simultaneously. So hold Control Shift down and then press enter. So when I do that, Control Shift Enter, it calculates the inverse of A. If I didn't hold down Control Shift and Enter, it would have just done it for one cell. That's not what I wanted. So now that I have the inverse of A, I can get my solution vector x right here by multiplying A inverse times B. Now to do that, Excel has a matrix multiplication function. So what I do is I highlight these 3 cells, that's where I'm going to be storing the solution vector, and I hit equals and I type in M mult. So M mult stands for matrix multiplication, open parentheses. Take the first array, which is the inverse of A. I highlight all those cells, and then I hit comma, so I type a comma, and then I hit the array that I'm multiplying. I highlight the array that I'm multiplying it by, or highlight the cells that store the array that I'm multiplying it by, which is B. So I highlight the B array, and then I close parentheses, and you see that these cells are where the A inverse matrix is stored, and these cells here, F3 to F5, that's where the B vector is stored. Now I have to hit Control Shift Enter once again to evaluate this. Control Shift Enter, and we see that it calculates my solution vector 1, 2, 3. Now if I wanted to check my answer, I could type down here, this is a check, and I'm just going to highlight this and put some borders around it so it looks nice. Oh, come on. 1, 2, 3 borders. There we go. Alright, now my check here, I'm going to highlight these 3 cells, and I'm going to set this equal to M mult. So I'm going to multiply A, the A matrix, times the X matrix. So comma, highlight X, close parentheses, and then Control Shift Enter, and we see that we get the B vector back. Alright, so I've demoed in this video how to calculate the inverse of a matrix in MATLAB and Excel, and how to use that inverse to calculate the solution of a linear set of equations. So by doing A inverse times B, and then checking to make sure that the answer gives a reasonable result by multiplying A times our answer to see if we get B back. Alright, now you should know how to do that, and we'll see you in the next video.